I can't do it. I'm horrible at
Yeah,
normal conversation.
yeah. Small talk. Well, that's the thing, Seth. I think small talk is, it's fine and whatnot, but we really like to get into deep, deep
Hmm.
subjects and discuss, history and geography and human nature and political philosophy and all of this stuff. And so the small talk can be a little bit harder, especially if it's forced. So,
Yeah.
um, but we're actually not talking small talk or necessarily deep thoughts today. This is kind of especially for me, a more of a reflective podcast and a kind of a look back because today is the 27th of May, and on the 25th, so 2 days ago, I celebrated, observed, remembered, whatever you
Hmm.
want to call it, my 25th anniversary in and with Macedonia. Even though I'm not there right
Hmm.
now, I'm recording this from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona. Uh, 25 years ago, well, 25 years ago in 2 days now, I am now into my 26th year with Macedonia, which is a kind of a interesting thought. A quarter of a
Hmm.
century ago, I flew into Macedonia for the first time ever. I was on a week-long business trip in Croatia. If I recall correctly, because one of our clients back then, I worked for a PR firm in Washington D.C. One of our clients was the Croatian National Tourist Board.
Hmm.
This is 1996, so there was still a
Yeah.
war going on there, and the Croatian National Tourist Board had hired us to promote tourism into Croatia,
Well,
even as Serbian shells and Montenegrin shells rained down on various parts of Croatia, including Zagreb at some point and Dubrovnik, but that was
but
early
it was
on,
affordable,
etc.
what you're saying.
It was very affordable. And actually, some of the journalists that we brought in, so we did this for about 3 years that I was with the firm, and we recruited American journalists, tourism
Uh-huh.
journalists, mainly print, but some TV. Internet wasn't a big thing then. There
Hmm.
wasn't a lot of digital stuff. Again, this is a quarter of a century ago. Well, longer when we started working with the
Hmm.
Croatian National Tourist Board, and we'd have these organized trips. And one of those, 2 years in a row, we did what was called the Dalmatia Cup, a yacht race down the
Uh-huh.
Adriatic. And the Croatian government provided the yachts and the skippers, and the journalists that we recruited could either help crew the yacht
Hmm.
or travel along on land. And and then we competed against other yachts which had journalists from other countries because the Croatian government was bringing in journalists from all over because they smartly, frankly, they wanted to keep the idea of tourism alive in Croatia even during the war because they knew at some point the war would end
Yeah.
and people would come back. So good on them for
And you
that.
were able to
Forward
outrun
looking.
the Serbian destroyers, I suppose.
That's right. So actually, the coast was fine. The Dalmatian coast was fine.
Yeah, by then,
The
yeah.
years that we were bringing people in. Although I do remember flying into Zagreb on I think it was August 20, 1995, during Operation
Uh-huh.
Storm, when the Serbs were shelling Zagreb from
Yeah,
I think it was Bosnia,
I
if I
suppose
recall.
so,
And I
yeah.
had journalists with me. I had journalists with me. So here's your briefing book. Here's your flak jacket. Here's your helmet. No, not quite that bad, but anyway, it all
Yeah,
worked
they
out fine.
hit
I think
Zagreb
on
a
that trip.
number of times with those
Yeah, yeah,
like missiles or something.
yeah. And so we went to from there we went to the Istrian Peninsula. But anyway, back on the how I came to Macedonia. So I was at the end of a yacht race. I think one of our week long yacht races down the Adriatic. It was a very difficult job for me.
Hmm.
Make sure that journalists have plenty of wine and food and whatnot. Uh, and I had a year previous to that, I had met a gentleman by the name of Terry Haselius and his wife
Hmm.
Nell, and they were with a group called Mercy Corps, which was based in Portland, Oregon, still is, humanitarian group. They had an office in Zagreb and an office in Budapest, and I had met Terry on a trip in the region, actually in Pristina of all places, with two congressmen in tow, which is another longer story. But anyway, we stayed in touch. This is spring of '95, and so spring of '96, he says, I'm moving my office from Zagreb and my office from Budapest to Skopje, and I've got a temporary job opening there because one of my employees from Budapest doesn't want to come.
Hmm.
He says, "Do you want to come and work for 3 months? No guarantee longer than that, but I had been in D.C. for 7 years. And I said, why not? I'll have myself a little adventure. So at the end of that trip in 96, I tacked on 3 days, flew from Zagreb to Skopje, came to Macedonia for 3 days just to see if I could, if I would like the place, if I would like the people. So I landed there on May 25, 1996. Terry and his wife weren't there yet. They got in at the end of those 3 days, but he had a taxi driver who picked me up and spoke just a very little bit of English. And he kind of took me around and dropped me off at their house on Vodno. And then I had 3 days to kind of wander around by myself. And although I do remember the taxi driver, he took me up on Vodno and to see the sights, and whatnot. And then what's the restaurant in the park, in Gradski Park? Uranus?
Oh, wait. There is Balkanic and...
The tennis courts?
Oh, yeah, Urania. Yes, Urania.
Urania, yeah. So I remember he took me there. And other than that, I just kind of was free to wander around. And that was my plan. So at the end of 3 days, I said, and Terry and his wife, I think, drove in at the end of those 3 days and said, yeah, sure, I'll come back. I come back in July 15, I think, of 1996, and I'll stay for 3 months, and then I'll go back to
How
Washington.
do you remember the dates?
On with my, because I wrote it all down. That's how I remember a lot of stuff. That's a good question, though. But I remember these things because I write it down. So
because otherwise it would be like borderline card counting or something like that.
Well, you got to remember in a previous life I was an accountant.
Oh yeah.
A tax accountant. So I call myself a recovering accountant.
So it's that bad.
Numbers and
you flew into a war zone to escape accounting.
Exactly. So yeah, I can be very strange in that way. Actually, since 2003, I have written. I keep a running log of where I sleep and when. What countries, what cities, what hotels, what campgrounds in the middle of the mountains of Arizona, things like that. So it's a very strange log, I guess, but it's interesting because I can go back and find out where was I when on what date. So. That's just
I'm sure the CIA is very grateful to your pedantry.
And that's funny. In the 25 years with Macedonia, of course, especially early on, accused of being a CIA spy.
Yeah.
The problem is I've never figured out where they sent my checks because I haven't got them. And so for services rendered, I'm not getting paid. I don't understand.
But you got that a lot, I assume, like walking around Skopje and befriending random Macedonians. Okay.
Yeah, and of course...
He's on to something. He's up to something.
Exactly. Well, and it's not so bad nowadays, but early on, you go into a restaurant, and you sit down by yourself, and people start looking at you funny.
Yeah.
Definitely, spy. I don't think it's the same as much anymore.
No,
and
now
that's
you're strange if you actually have a companion and not just tap on your phone all the time.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that is funny. And that's not peculiar to Macedonia, of course.
Yeah,
That's
of course.
I think any former communist country. But yeah, so 3 days became 3 months, and somewhere in the middle of the 3 months, Terry said, "Well, guess what? We can extend this for a year if you like." I said, "Yeah, okay, why not? I like it. I like the Macedonians." And quit my job in Washington, put all my stuff into storage, thought I'd stay for a year, stayed for 7 years, bought this house where I'm recording now in Oro Valley, Arizona in 2003. But then, most of the aughts, even after I formally left Macedonia, I know 2004 because I was there in February of 2004 when President Trajkovski and 8 of his colleagues perished. I was working on a project. It had nothing to do with PR or anything else, but I was with him, with Boris, the day before he died. And then stayed for the funeral, obviously, and then Vilma Trajkovska, his widow, asked me to, spend some time and create the foundation, which then I spent most of 2004 there, and then, 5, 6, 7, 8. In 2008, in 2007, I should say, the government was preparing the World Conference on Dialogue Among Religions and Civilizations, which Boris had started in 2003. So they were doing another one in 2007. I think it was Zoran Yalevsky was the ambassador in Washington at the time, and he said, we need a marquee name speaker for the conference in Ohrid. And do you know anybody? And the only connection I had was through a Norwegian NGO called Marita, which helps young people, students, stay off of drugs. And they had a branch in Skopje, and I was on the board. And the gentleman that created it, Leif Holstad, Norwegian, one of his good friends is Morten Harket, lead singer of Aha. You say Morten Harket, nobody knows the name, but as soon as you hit the opening tunes of Take On Me, everybody knows it. So reached out to Leif, who reached out to Morten and invited him to come down, and Morten said yes. So spent a weekend with Morten Harket in Lake Ohrid, which for me as an 80s guy was really cool. And then he brought his manager and friend at the time, Sigurd Einarsson, who was a filmmaker by profession. And anyway, long story short, that was 2007. 2008, I went up to Oslo for the release party for the album that Morten had been working on at the time, Letter from Egypt, which contains the song A Name is a Name. And that's where we agreed to make this documentary. So I spent a lot of 2009 in Macedonia working on the film and whatnot. And then we released it at the end of 2009. Which frankly sounds like ancient history right now. This is 2021. That was 12 years ago.
I still don't remember what day of the week this is. ever since COVID.
What is today? Today is Thursday. This is episode 114 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin on a Thursday, in Skopje, Macedonia.
Yes, episode 114, yeah. But actually, it was kind of funny. I was thinking the other day, I've 25 years in Macedonia, so got all these memories, all these things I've done. I've written 1 million words about Macedonia or for the Macedonians.
And I've
through my
translated
columns.
at least like 800,000 of those.
At least 500,000 of those, yes. And I want to thank you, Cvetin, for doing that, for faithfully doing that. I appreciate it. You know my voice better than anybody in Macedonia. And our friend Elizabeta Bojanovska also has translated a great deal of work as well. But the film, the podcast, the writings, and I've got 3 ideas for 3 more films in my head, which may or may not. But I was thinking about this just the other day because I was thinking about our film, A Name is a Name. In 2029, 2019's already come and gone. 2029, A Name is a Name Revisited, or A Name is Still a Name, or You're Damn Well Right, A Name is a Name. Something, something like that.
Too furious.
But it would be a blast to go back and look at the people in the film
for your name
and find
only.
them. Yeah, exactly. Go back and find them and sit down and talk to them again and say, okay, where are we? Who knows, by 2029, Macedonia still will not be in the European Union, of course. NATO may have broken up by then. And Zaya will be out by then, of course.
Or worse.
Hopefully long out. Or worse. But I could do the film. I could tell you what everybody we're going to sit down with would say. I already know that. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I doubt.
Maybe some of the kids.
I doubt any of
know.
them turned out Zaev supporters, God forbid.
Yeah.
Depends how many are still sticking around the country, but I doubt.
True.
I actually still can't even figure out who are the people who vote for Zaev.
Yeah, I have the same issue with people that vote for Democrats over here. I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can vote for the left, other than it's because the left gives you stuff, and of course there is no such thing as free stuff. It's all paid for by somebody. But that's the economic aspect, the cultural or culture wars aspect of it all. Of course, it's all about power and warped view of the world that our friends on the left seem to have. So, gosh, but 25 years ago, I keep coming back to that. No cell phones. Macedonia wasn't even 5 years old as a independent modern day nation state. Of course, Macedonia has an ancient history, but it had just gained independence. Less than 5 years before that. Chris Hill, the first U.S. ambassador, wasn't even there yet. And again, no cell phones. The internet was very new.
So it was the golden age without the U.S. embassy.
It was. Victor Komros was the charge there. No, don't even have no idea whatever happened there.
I met him in D.C. I interviewed him once, and we had the funniest moment. I notified him that at the moment Branko Crvenkovski and Ljubča Georgievski are in a coalition, and he just looked at me funny like, is this guy crazy?
Oh, that is funny. Wow. I wonder whatever happened.
He moved to Florida. Of course, he had a place close to D.C. And after Macedonia, actually, he went he was actually sent to Macedonia to enforce the embargo on Serbia. So he was like an embargo expert. And after Macedonia, he went on formulating the Iraq sanctions and embargo. And then I think he kept in this line of work through the State Department and the UN. He's like an embargo expert of sorts.
Embargo. But I assume he's retired now.
Oh, yeah, he was retired in 2012 when I met him.
Yeah. Wow. So I never met him, but I remember he was there before Chris. And then of course I've known all the ambassadors. Maybe not.
That's not something to brag about, honestly.
I know. But the only reason I bring that up is because, not just the ambassadors, but also the staff, American staff at the embassy or USAID.
Even worse. But continue.
Yeah, or any of the other groups there is that they come and go. I don't know if I'm an expert on Macedonia or not, but I do know one thing, and this sounds like a brag, maybe because it is I've forgotten more than they'll ever know about Macedonia. And it's just kind of, and they come in there with their worldview, and which is always leftist, of course, and their desire to force it on the Macedonians or any other country as well. The State Department is.
They've gone so far left by now that I don't even recognize this as any recognizable ideology. Yeah. This is. I think they're just making it up as they go along. Maybe even like a practical prank. Like, you really thought we were going along with this?
Yeah. By the way, the embassy didn't fly the BLM flag.
I don't think so, but they had like a solemn moment. They didn't post a picture of flying the flag or something like that, but they had a moment where the ambassador had the staff around for like a solemn moment. They were like quiet and sullen looking.
They didn't take a knee?
No, I responded to this. Yeah, I was surprised nobody took the knee.
It's because they have weak knees. Oh! And when I say BLM, I don't mean the Bureau of Land Management, of course. I'm referring to the neo-Marxist organization. So, anyway, but I know they put up the embassy in the rainbow colors the other day. I don't even know what day it was. Anyway, this is unpleasant to talk about these things. Let's talk about something else. Man, and I'm, thinking about all of the people that I have interacted with and known, and still know, but thinking about people that I interacted with early on and that I've lost touch with and whatnot, and I sometimes I have pangs of regret on losing touch with people. But if they're still around, that certainly can rekindle those relationships. There's a few people, back on an unpleasant subject. There's a few people that were friends and then for whatever reason decided to turn on me. I guess 25 years in any place, you're bound to have enemies. So
they're probably doing something right.
Exactly.
I mean, knowing some of the people who were like, who you cut off or they cut you off. I mean, that's you're doing well.
You're
better off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, but it's always better to focus on the positive things than positive aspects about 25 years. And with Macedonian, obviously first and foremost, it's the relationships with people. And I think I've known you now for 20 of those 25
Yeah,
years,
so
roughly.
about yeah.
Because you started translating when I started writing for Dnevnik in, I think it was
Yeah,
2001,
after the
actually.
war,
So,
sometime.
yeah, yeah. Gosh, and many of the other people that I've known for so long. So yeah, relationships first and foremost. I've been blessed, really, really blessed. I'm rich, frankly, rich in relationships, and some of my closest friends are Macedonian. My closest friends on the planet, I'd like to say.
Yeah.
Actually, my closest friends on the planet are not Americans, setting aside my own family here.
Hmm.
Um, but they're either Macedonians or Estonians. So, um, but
Yeah.
anyway,
We were introduced by Branko
besides,
Girovski. Speaking of people who we rather
oh
not keep in
yes,
touch with anymore.
that's right. Yes, that's
Yeah,
funny.
quite a
Wow.
few people went off the deep end here after through the years, and
Yeah.
given everything that's happened, like I say, you really you should be crazy not to go crazy around here. I fear more people who are like still keeping a sane demeanor and in this environment.
Yeah. Well, I haven't. No, I haven't gone crazy, or maybe I was crazy to begin with because I've always had this wanderlust in me, and I think that's because when I was 5 months old, my parents up and moved us to
Hmm.
England. My father was stationed at Lakenheath Royal Air Force Base there. So now I don't remember. I spent the first 3 years of my life growing up in England. I don't remember a bloody thing, but I know it had, and I know it had a great impact on me, which is why I'm an Anglophile. But I've got this wanderlust, which a lot of people don't like to travel and prefer to be
Hmm.
homebodies, and that's fine and that's good. But I love to get out. Maybe that speaks to my somewhat crazy side. But speaking of wanderlust, so have you ever made it to Kratovo? This is a bit of a running joke between the two of us. I've been there 3 or 4 times, and I'm still waiting for you to
Yeah,
go.
still working on those plans, like trying to
Okay, all right.
include it in my busy schedule of moping around at home and
Good. I
acting
mean,
like we're still under curfew for the coronas.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, you're one of those you actually like it. So,
Yeah, nothing much changed actually in my. I lost my
yeah.
2 or 3 trips to like Bulgaria or Greece during the year,
All
but
right.
other than that, not really. Nothing much
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah. Yeah. But as I wrote in my column the other day on 25 years with Macedonia, and going back to how I'm blessed and rich in relationships, but and that's the first thing, of course, that attracted me to Macedonia was the people and the fact that they opened up their doors and their homes and their hearts to me, a total stranger, and that's what endeared me to Macedonia was the Macedonians. But the second thing I think, as I mentioned in the article, of course, is the beauty of Macedonia, and of course, I come from the great sovereign state of Arizona with the Grand Canyon and so much other natural beauty. But Macedonia, of course, is mountainous, which I really, really like and love. And I'm not a water guy. I
Hmm.
don't need an ocean or a beach or a sea, even though I understand that and I can enjoy it and whatnot. But the lakes and the rivers and throughout Macedonia, and I haven't been to all of them, of course, but I've been to a lot of them. And the mountains, and then the vineyards, and I mean, there are places, Cvetin, in Macedonia that remind me of
Yeah.
Tuscany. You know, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And the tourism potential, and of course, setting aside the pandemic, I think that the number of people coming to Macedonia as tourists over the years just increases year on year, year over year, um, because it has so much to offer. And it's been a absolute joy to be able to travel throughout Macedonia. I do want to do more hiking,
Hmm.
in future trips because that's something I've been becoming reacquainted with here in Arizona over the past 7 years. I used to do it as a teenager and
Hmm.
then got out of practice, especially when I moved to Washington. But just hiking and enjoying the mountains and there's just some incredibly gorgeous sights in Macedonia. if that's what you enjoy. But beyond that, of course, the vineyards and the wine tourism, and then all the sporting activities, from the paragliding to the horse riding um, to what's the biking,
Yeah.
mountain biking, mountain biking. So many different things like that are open that Macedonia can offer.
And now,
That's
now we're
kind of
promoting all-terrain vehicle riding across mountains, thanks to our prime minister.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
But
That's
but because
true.
of him now, it's gosh, you don't really want to do it.
No. But plus, it cuts up the land. Mountain biking, hiking, horse riding, fine. It doesn't tear up the ground as much. And you're on well-defined trails. But I suppose ATV you are as well.
Yeah.
But
I took a little bit of hiking
anyway,
recently, and now that I have a dog, and lo and behold, I do one destination which is kind of like little known for a couple of times, and the third time I go there, there's already probably somebody got wind of this that lazy folks like me are hiking there, so there's already like a stand for coffee, for drinks,
oh
for
my goodness.
sausages.
Oh, well. After we stop recording, you can tell me where it
Yeah.
is, so that you don't want to talk about your hidden and undisclosed
Yeah,
location
yeah.
that
But
you found that is already well known, of
But
course.
I know you do a more radical type of hiking. But this is the type of hiking for me.
I
Like
do.
20 minutes hike, cold coffee waiting for you there. Fine, excellent. I can.
Well, no, that's fine too. I mean, although European hiking, and I've talked about this with my brother-in-law
Mhm.
a bit, because he's he and I, and we got a couple other buddies that we hike with around here. Overnight camping, with your tents and your food and your stoves and your water, which of course is the most important thing. Especially here in Arizona,
Mhm.
you want to make sure you have water or sources of water. Your clothing, and then first aid kit and flashlights, all that stuff that you have to put on a backpack on your back, and then hike, you know, 1,000, 1,500 meter vertical, over 20,
Mhm.
25 kilometers or more. Uh, but the thing about European hiking is that you have these mountain houses or mountain
Yep.
huts a lot, where you just have to have a day pack basically, and you get to the mountain house and they've got food and bedding, maybe showers, and so it's a much more in some ways civilized way of hiking, I think, and enjoying it. So although on our hikes we do take our beer, our scotch, our wine, of course,
Mhm.
which adds to the weight, but it makes it a little more civilized and enjoyable
No,
at
of
the
course,
same time.
that type of weight is like it's a necessity.
Absolutely, yes. And the next day the pack is much lighter, of course.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but yeah, yeah, that's something, and I keep telling him and my sister that they've got to come over, and when they do, we'll organize some hiking. And he's a fisherman too, so I've got to find some. You're gonna have to let me know if you know of any fishermen there, and good. I know there's plenty of fishing spots,
Yeah.
but that's not my forte. So,
Yeah, me
but
neither. Again, only Girovsky comes to mind. But we don't want to go there.
no, we don't. So, but yeah.
Remember when he caught Velia with his hook? Both literally and figuratively.
Yes, yes, indeed. Oh, wow. Um, trying to think of before we gone online here, I was trying to think of stories, and the funny thing was, my mind kind of went blank. Be, and maybe that's because there's so many stories that I just can't focus on any one in particular.
Mhm.
Uh, of the past 25 years. Of course, there was various wars. First of all, the NATO's very defensive bombing of what was then Yugoslavia,
Mhm.
and the subsequent refugees that came in from Kosovo, which of course then launched the career of Boris Tarkovsky and made him
Yep.
president at the end of the day. And then there was 2001, which I was there for. Uh, and then some of the other, you know, events that we don't need to necessarily get into. But those were really defining events for Macedonia. And of course, 1999. Well, neither 1999, 2001 weren't the fault of the Macedonians, um, and yet they so severely impacted Macedonia and the Macedonians, and you know they're in the history books and they'll be written about and talked about for years to come. Um, I'm not really sure where I'm going with this right now, but
that it has been a bumpy ride.
it has indeed, yeah. You know, and I guess maybe where I'm going with this is that you know throughout Macedonia's short 30-year history, again as a independent modern day nation state, Macedonia is ancient, but in the almost 30 years that this existed as an independent modern day nation state, it has been buffeted and tossed on the waves and run over and beaten up and attacked in so many different ways, internally, externally. Now in a different manner. It's not with literally weapons of war, but it's with weapons of words in the case of Bulgaria and Greece. And I remember it's more in the past, not so much today, but in the first 15 years of Macedonia's existence since independence, the pundits all saying, well, Macedonia is going to collapse, and that's just going to bring about a greater Balkan conflagration, and it just can't stand up to all of these things. And yet, Macedonia hasn't just survived, but in many ways I think it has thrived. And I think all of that speaks to the spirit of the Macedonians that have been able to withstand these attacks. Again, more with weapons of war before, now with weapons of words. But the Macedonians have been able to withstand these attacks and continue on, with life, with the Macedonian culture and tradition and everything else that goes with it. And I think that speaks very, very well of the Macedonians in the Republic, in the region, and of course around the world. And I think to me, that's a bit of good news. And it tells me that Macedonia will not only continue to just survive, but, with a little more work and gumption and stick-to-itiveness and hope and everything that goes with it, not just survive, but thrive. So
Yeah, we were able to
and
lift it up after the war in 2001. Now it's
yeah,
another whole new set of problems after 2015 and 2018. So
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which part was worse, honestly, because this now it's an ongoing. It still hasn't finished the current
Right.
round of attacks and dismantling of what was supposed to be a Macedonian nation state. So we still
Mm-hmm.
don't know what the whole extent of the damage is, but we'll see. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the to your point about a Macedonian nation state, it's not just Macedonia that's under attack. Of course, the idea of the sovereign nation state, and now here's where we go deep into thoughts and philosophy and history and all that. The very idea of the modern of a sovereign national nation state is under attack
Yeah.
from the left, whether it's the State Department or the European Union, or even I might add NATO. Because it's a very Marxian thought to try and obliterate any of these distinctions between the nations and the nation states, as well as belief, religion, and make everybody quote unquote equal, which is impossible to do. But that's what their project is. That's the whole project of the European Union. The European Union, rightly, the founders of the European Union rightly looked at the horrors of World War II, but they drew the wrong
Yeah.
conclusions, in my opinion. They said that It was nations and sovereignty and quote unquote nationalists that created all this, and that's not true. It was a corrupt ideology that said we're superior to you, we're better than you, and we're going to take your land and kill you. I mean, that was the ideology that created World War II. It wasn't the idea of a sovereign nation state living within a defined set of borders that said we enjoy our people, our nation, our language, our culture, our history, and everything that goes with it. That's wonderful. That's what makes life worth living, is being able to go to the various European nation states and the various nation states of the world and experience something different and different people and everything that goes with it. But that's the problem with, in my opinion, with the European Union, and again, in a different way, NATO in some ways. But yeah, that is what the project is trying to destroy that. And again, it's not just Macedonia. But it seems to be more acutely directed towards Macedonia for whatever reason. I can't quite put my finger on it, other than the fact that Macedonia is literally at a crossroads geographically. There's been the quote-unquote Macedonian question hanging around for 100+ years. And they think that if they could, I don't know, dilute the Macedonian consciousness, or not get rid of the Macedonian state, that would create, I think they're smart enough to know that would create even more problems, but it just seems that it's, again, more directed towards Macedonia. I don't know why exactly.
Yeah, it's the duplicity, it's the hypocrisy of it all. First of all, it's the funny thing is that the people in Brussels, they were able to come to the conclusion that the lesson you're supposed to learn out of World War II is that the entire continent of Europe needs to be ruled by one center under einer flag, and that's by diktat, which is really
It's Brussels, not Berlin.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but from a city that starts on the letter B. And of course, I mean, there's a bunch of countries in the Balkans which have, in the meantime, had much worse fates than ours, including Croatia. What it went through, and not to mention Bosnia, Kosovo, Serbia, and whatever. But in our case, it's the hypocrisy of the moment that the European Union, which is all, at least verbally, it's all sweetness and light and all the good things.
Peace, sweetness, and light eternal.
Yeah, and it's being used for, literally for countries which they were, foolish enough to let join, like Greece, to make all of their wildest and pettiest nationalist dreams from the over 100 years ago, make them true by using the institutions and the clout of the leverage that comes with being an EU member state, which is, this is the hypocrisy of our moment. It would have been much more honest if, Greece just invaded us, or Serbia or Bulgaria, or Albanians did, of course. But instead they try to use these institutions for, couching their claims to territory through the language of Brussels, which makes it all very absurd, very, words have no meaning anymore. Then the State Department came here and they started talking about democracy and rule of law and justice, and they just perverted every sense of these words. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think this is why it's difficult for us to pin it down and even discuss the issue, because words no longer mean anything in this dispute, in this country.
Yeah, well, no, increasingly, and I think that's brought on by the left globally, is that they words don't mean anything. They continually change the meaning of words. Of course, there is no truth. There's your truth. There's my truth. There's his truth. There's her truth. Or in the case of our trans friends, there's they truth. There is no truth, which is not true. There has to be truth. It's like our old friend G.K. Chesterton says, a moral standard must remain the same, otherwise it is not a standard. So, and there has to be truth, and there is truth. But when you start saying there's no truth or there's your truth, words mean different things, then everything's out the window.
Yep.
But it's all, I think it's all directed in service towards what you just said, your point, that it is this, for lack of a better word, ruling elite, speaking for the West. China, Russia's different in other parts of the world, but for the West, it's this movement towards, it is, it's I've written about it, and I think we've talked about him before, the Polish philosopher, writer, and MEP, although I don't know if he's still an MEP or not, Ryszard Letutko, The Demon in Democracy, who writes basically that, quote unquote, democracy, as we understand it, has more in common with totalitarianism than meets the eye, and that is the march towards that. What it means is that, going back to my earlier point about how the Macedonians have not just survived but have managed to thrive, is that it's something that you just got to keep working on. There are times of rest and respite, and times to be carefree and to enjoy the fruits of our labor and life, but overall the fight always continues, and it can't be let up of not only fighting for the truth and what is right, but in the case of Macedonia, fighting for, the preservation of the Macedonian state and the Macedonian people and the Macedonian language, etc. So, because it's always going to be under attack, whether it's from the unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats in the State Department or in Brussels or NATO or from Greece or Bulgaria or perhaps Greater Albania, etc. So, and I think that's the lesson, and that's what I came to learn over 25 years. I certainly, when I arrived in Macedonia in 1996, I never would have thought these thoughts. I certainly wasn't thinking about the European Union and NATO and democracy in general the way I think about them today.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot, and I learned it quick, and that's the good news. And now that I have learned those lessons, I know what I need to do, over the next 25 years, if God gives me another 25 years of life, and in Macedonia. I'm sure as long as I'm alive, I'll be involved in Macedonia. I know that for a fact. We'll just see how long it is. Maybe it's 25 times 2. Maybe it's 50 years. I'll be very old then.
Yeah. So
it'll be interesting to.
You're at like half your lifetime in and with Macedonia, right?
Oh yeah. So.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of a strange thought, especially considering that it was supposed to be a 3-month visit, and actually, and to be honest, there have been a couple of times in the past 25 years when I've said, I think I'm done. Actually, I can only think of 2 times in particular.
Me too, buddy. Me too.
But yeah, I'm thankful. I'm grateful for Macedonia. I'm grateful for the Macedonians. I'm humbled by what I've learned from Macedonia and the Macedonians over the past 25 years, and I hope that I have been able to give a little bit of encouragement to my friends and family there, and even random Macedonians I've never met and never will meet.
No, we're definitely happy to have you. We're fortunate to have you.
Yeah, thank you.